he'll never know that I became a police officer because of something that he did and something that he said, and that was be human in the moment that I needed to see humanity be its best.
Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, I don't know what this world is coming to.
You're listening to the Black and Blue Podcast, a discussion and celebration of the roles of African Americans and other minorities in U.S. law enforcement. Your host on the Black and Blue Podcast is Dale Peters, a law enforcement professional with over 20 years experience in the business. Hop on board this Black and Blue train of interviews, current events, and pop culture conversations. So get ready. The Black and Blue Podcast is coming at you right now. What's going on, fam? Welcome to the latest edition of the Black and Blue Podcast, where we celebrate diversity in U.S. law enforcement. My name is Dale, and I'm the host. Thank you for joining me today, because I got a real good one for you. But before I get to that, let me ask you, please click those like, subscribe, and bell icons right down here on my YouTube channel. And if you listen to me on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you rate the Black and Blue Podcast 5 stars. And finally, make sure you check me out on any one of my social media pages for even more content. You can find me everywhere at Black and Blue US. All right, so with that out the way, let's bring on today's guest. My guest today is the head of a special law enforcement agency with a specialized mission, and he's here to let us know all about it. So Black and Blue fam, please help me welcome to the show Maryland Natural Resources Police Superintendent Orlando Lilly.
Thank you.
How you doing, sir?
I'm well. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us here on the show today from the lovely state of Maryland. I'm out here in California, and how's things going today out in Maryland?
It is hot, but it's a beautiful day at the same time. We've been waiting on this pretty much all year. Get past these winter months and get past
Right.
spring and the April showers that turned into May showers. So we've been looking forward to some of this weather that we have right here.
Yeah, it's about that time of year, and it's June. The first, it's not quite summer yet, but we're getting there. What do you consider hot? What's hot right now for you?
Hot for me is anything above 70 degrees and humid. Being someone, and I'm pretty sure we'll get to my bio in a little bit, but being someone who was stationed out in California and San Diego during my military time, that weather was hot, but it wasn't humid. So East Coast weather and that humidity is a little different.
Yes, it's a little different. Where in Maryland are you? Whereabouts?
So my headquarters is here in Annapolis, but I actually live in Ellicott City, Maryland, which would be considered as Howard County, one of the more affluent neighborhoods and communities within the state.
All right. So, yeah, I appreciate you coming on again from Maryland. And so I mentioned there in the intro that you are the head of the Maryland Natural Resources Police Department.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure not too many people have heard of that. Tell us all about it.
So Maryland Natural Resources Police is the oldest state police department within the whole state of Maryland. And actually it has 2 missions. A lot of people aren't aware of the fact that there's only 2 police departments within the state of Maryland that has full jurisdiction of the whole state of Maryland as it relates to being a full functional police department. But then there's only one of us who has the full functional police department mission as well as the conservation mission. So not only once you attend the police academy here, ours is normally a little bit longer, just because we don't only just teach you the criminal law side of things, but you also have to learn conservation law.
Okay. And what do you guys handle most of the time?
So on the conservation side, and municipal side, we handle anything that any traditional police department has. So that's nothing new. On the conservation side, we deal with everything from sea wildlife, sea species, wildlife, anything that might be an endangered species as it relates to those things, crabs, fish, So they work a lot with the scientists within the Department of Natural Resources to make sure that we keep things in balance as it relates to the ecosystem. And that's the probably the more extreme side of things and the more intellectual side of it. But to the mundane things such as people going out on boats and spending time on water, we're the major law enforcement that pretty much deals with everything on the main waterways in conjunction with our partner, the Coast Guards.
Okay, okay. And you do the same thing on land as well, say like hunting and stuff like that?
Yes, deal with hunting, fishing, making sure that those things are in place. Turkey season, deer season, all of those things that normally traditional outdoorsmen would deal with. Even some of the things that happen in state parks, from things people going hiking, camping, and all those other things as well.
Okay, okay. So you're a statewide agency. How large is the agency?
The agency is 323 if we're fully manned, 281 sworn, fully manned, but out of those, 63 are professional staff. I don't really use the term civilian because we're all civilians, so I make sure that we get the same level of respect as the sworn personnel.
Right. Yeah, because you did mention you did some time in the military. Let's talk
I
about that
did.
real quick before we move on. You were down here in San Diego. What branch?
The only one, the United States Navy,
You
and
said the only
spent
one.
and so the United States Navy, and I actually did 8 years. Four of those were active, and four inactive years.
Okay, okay. And how'd you enjoy your time out here in San Diego? San Diego's beautiful, I'll tell you that.
It is a beautiful place, but if you're an East Coast guy, you ultimately quickly gravitate back to the fact that you love having all four seasons, and I enjoyed all four seasons. But I definitely enjoyed my stay there during my A school time and during my boot camp time. It really was a fun place to be. I learned a lot, and I definitely got exposed to a lot of different cultures that I wasn't exposed to growing up in North Carolina.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, I tell you, four seasons are overrated, especially when it's winter and you got to shovel that snow and drive in it and all that. And no, I'm good.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I understand, but we set the tone once you got to go dress or get dressed up. We set the tone about how you need to look when you dressed up.
See, I live in a place called the Inland Empire that's north of San Diego, and we got mountains like Big Bear and all that where it does snow and people go up there
Okay.
to ski and stuff. But the beautiful thing about out here in Southern California, we can look at the snow, drive up there, and then have your fun when it did come back down.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I fully get it. I fully get it. I fully get it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you say you're from North Carolina. What
Yeah.
brought you to Maryland?
Well, born and raised in North Carolina, I actually had a stint here in the military. I traveled with a friend. When I got out and went back to college, my wife and who I'd been dating since the eighth grade, somebody I told who I was going to actually marry at the water fountain in the eighth grade, got
Okay, I
recruited.
see you. I see you.
She got recruited out of Duke University as an engineer at Westinghouse, and I was like, hey, I had to finish up summer school at North Carolina Central. I finished up school there and came right up to be after we got married to live with her.
Okay, and you've been there ever since. What's your journey into law enforcement?
Well, that also has ties to Maryland. While at North Carolina Central, there actually was a police department that I'd heard about was Baltimore County Police Department. At the time, Baltimore County was one of the pioneering agencies that was on the front end of the community policing. And the chief that they had at that time was Neil Behan. Neil Behan brought a whole lot of enlightenment, a former New York City cop who had actually came down to Baltimore County to look into some of the corruption at the time that was going on in Baltimore County Police Department, who then was offered an opportunity to become chief. And I told myself that any police department I ever applied to out of school, that was going to be the one. And I did just that. More than that, though, for me, that brought me here to ties to the police department was an experience that I had as a child. My parents divorced right around my 10th birthday, and my mom had moved to New Jersey. As you can imagine, a kid from North Carolina moving to the city. That was culture shock for me, and I did not even
Yep.
recognize that I was if you'd have told me I was country when I was living in the country, I would have never realized it. But when I got to Jersey, they quickly pointed out my accent was different, and I met a young guy by the name of Rolando. And Rolando and I became best friends, Dale, because all you had to do was switch the first two letters of our name around,
Yes.
Orlando and Rolando. And for whatever reasons, as kids would have it, well, we got in a fight. Back then, we would take box cutters to school. Being a country boy, I would always tell city kids that if you didn't kind of grow up like we grew up, you probably wasn't going to win a fist fight. And Rolando and I got separated. I'm walking off. Someone dared him to cut me with the box cutter. And I remember a young lady kept trying to get my attention by calling my name. So I finally turned around and Rolando was swinging the box cutter. For a while, I kind of ran backwards. I stopped and then I said, no, I'll just take it and beat him up again. And Dale, it didn't work out that way. And what happened was he ended up cutting me from the top of my right shoulder all the way around to my back. I ended up going to the hospital, losing a lot of blood. They thought I was going to pass. And I remember a police officer came in. And because my mom had left my dad, that was probably the first time in a long time that I'd felt that level of compassion from a male figure. Not only a male figure, but somebody that did not look like me. He was a white male, and someone in a profession that I was starting to have a disdain for some of the things that I would observe with the black and brown kids in that community at the time. But I can remember him making a statement pretty much to himself, and it was a rhetorical question, asking the question, what in the world was happening that a 10-year-old young boy would end up being in a hospital. And my mom had went back to North Carolina at the time, and she realized that my brother and I, we needed to be around my dad. But I remember being on that bed, and I said that if I lived, I was going to do what he did because he empowered me in that moment that somebody actually did care about me and that there was some value to my life. So much so that he did check on me when I moved back to North Carolina, and pretty much was one of the people that played a role in me going to joining the Boys and Girls Club and me discovering how well I played sports. And that pretty much changed the whole course of my life.
How did things work out with you and Rolando?
Well, Rolando and I, we didn't speak again, but I did one day out of curiosity. I was like, because my parent wanted to work something out with his parents because they didn't want him to have a record either. And Rolando actually ended up becoming a lawyer. And so I think that because of the lawyer, that was involved, that may have influenced his decision, just like the police officer that was involved influenced mine.
Okay, so things kind of worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, maybe one day you guys can chop it up and talk
Yeah.
about, how things worked out for the two of you after that moment. But yeah, that's a tough one though. But kids live and learn, right?
Oh, most definitely. And look, we were kids, so that was,
Yeah.
because of my faith and what I believe, that had to be part of my narrative and part of my story. Had that not happened, I'm not doing this work. So that had to happen. I'm definitely one of those people that Albert Einstein says that he reminds himself 100 times a day that his inner and his outer life is because the labors of others, the living and the dead, and we all need to exert ourselves and give in the same fashion in which he received. And when he says labor, we know that there was some work that went in to get us in these places and these spaces, but more importantly, there had to be some work in ourselves internally to get us in the spaces and places.
No doubt. And I guess apparently your shoulder and your back turned out okay, right?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So then you went on to be an employee, an officer with the Baltimore County, you said, right?
Yes, sir. Baltimore County
How was
Police
that?
Department.
How was that career for you?
That was a beautiful experience for me. I spent 30 years there. Actually, during my time there, I also was a president of the minority organization there that represented the interests specifically of the African American officers, Baltimore, the Blue Guardians. And they were formed in 1986 in that agency. And so it really helped shape and form my ability to navigate political landscape, but also to allow me to shape my narrative in context when I was speaking in front of executives as well as politicians. And so I've been a big advocate in that agency that played a big role in a lot of the diversity initiatives that we were trying to start there at one time.
Okay. And Baltimore County, I think that sounds familiar. I think there was a lot of talk about them on The Wire, right? Baltimore
Well,
PD and Baltimore
that's
County.
actually Baltimore City, but they did bring it. There was some
They
episodes or
did.
two where
Yeah,
they did
I do
have
remember that.
yeah, where they had some interaction with Baltimore County Police Department. Yes, actually, Baltimore City is the largest police department, municipal police department in the state of Maryland, and then
Hmm.
Baltimore County was like number two.
Yeah, yeah. How was that interaction between county and city?
Oh, I mean, I still have a lot of relationships with my friend, and we do a lot of work together. Just like in the role I'm in now, we have to work with every jurisdiction across the state. But as a Baltimore County also, and as particularly my last assignment as the Western Patrol Division Commander, a lot of my precincts that I had there bordered Baltimore City. So there was a lot of joint efforts that we would work on and a lot of cases that we worked on together.
Let me ask you, because it's a little different out here in California. We don't have county police departments. We only
Mhm.
have county sheriff's offices, and they take on the same role for contract cities and
Mhm.
unincorporated areas. Is it the same there, or what's
No,
the
for
role of
us,
the county
yeah,
police?
yeah. The county police is a full, functioning, full service police department all of its own. There's no little police departments within the county. The sheriff's office pretty much handle the courts and anything in the courts. Baltimore County is, and particularly around the country, is one of the few county police departments that did what we did what they still do, but did what I did.
Okay, and how long did you do there?
I did 30 years. I did 30. I was
Wow.
there for 30 years, and then I was able to add military time, so they gave me up to 34 years in about 11 months.
Okay, and then did you retire, or did you
I
find
did.
this new
I retired.
opportunity?
I knew that I had started looking and seeing what opportunities were out there for me that would allow me to still make that transition into actually being the head of an agency and not just chasing the opportunity, but more in line with the purpose. I think that most of us who spend times in this career, you have to make a decision because the culture is very adaptive. But as opposed to adapting the culture, asking yourself, what is it that you really can provide in the way of service? Where if you're given the opportunity, that you would be able to allow that to permeate throughout the agency itself. And so for me, it was I retired from there. This opportunity had presented itself as one of the opportunities that was out there. I actually applied here. I also applied to a few more agencies, and the other two were out of state. So this one made sense because it was right here.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity came. They called, and I definitely said yes. I'd already kind of had my mind made up that it was time. I've been there 30 years, and it was time to move on and allow some other people to step in and step away. And I felt like, more importantly, that the thing that I wanted to see and the mission that I wanted to accomplish there had been achieved. And so
Right.
I felt like that I left nothing on the table while I was there.
Had you heard of Natural Resources PD before applying?
Yes, I had heard about it before applying. Did I fully understand the breadth and width of everything that they did? I did not. So I started doing all of my research. And ironically, one of the things that I came to realize that had I known some of the things that they did in conjunction with doing the regular law enforcement stuff that I did already, I probably would have made this be one of my choices as well.
Yeah, yeah, because it's a definitely unique and specialized agency there. You kind of
Mhm.
talked about some of the things you do there. I know it's one of the lead agencies as far as Homeland Security on the waterways.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And that is something that we do in conjunction with the Coast Guard as
Right.
well. For those who may be familiar with the incident at the Key Bridge, we played a very significant role in the Key Bridge because our boats were the first ones to be able to actually go and provide other services for other units at the same time.
Yeah. Had they cleared out all that bridge debris so far?
Yeah, most of the debris has been cleared to my knowledge. I think, once our role was fulfilled, because the bridge in itself is really falls up under the Maryland Department of Transportation Authority. Once our role was fulfilled, we kind of did the surface checks and things that we needed to check to make sure that the area could still be safe as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was a real crazy thing that we saw everybody saw on TV when that happened,
Hmm.
and we were just questioning how could that happen, and some of those
Yeah.
investigations come out and saw how that came out. That's crazy to know that it could happen at any moment,
Yeah.
anywhere. It can happen
Yeah.
here, it can happen there, like it did happen
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. 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 That's exactly right. I mean, it really puts into perspective things that's made with man hands are
Yes,
how fragile that they really are, and how much comfort and faith that we put on going on our travels day to day. I said, but we all know that, hey, that could it still was a horrific loss, because anytime you lose one life, that's a horrific loss. But it could have been so much worse had it caught that during the heavy traffic timing. But like I said, we
right.
value life. We value life. People lost life. It changed family lives that day, and it changed the whole area within the state of Maryland at the same time. And so we still are mourning and grieving with the families and with those losses. And not only do our hearts go out to them, but our prayers still go out to those
Facts, facts. And then, so how long you been with Natural Resources?
families. So my swearing in appointment date was April 17th. So it seems like that it
Just this
still
past
seems,
April?
yeah, just past
Oh
April.
wow!
So still, so
Congratulations.
thank you. I appreciate it. So, like I said, I was really excited when I got the phone call. I become the second African American to actually run the agency in this history. And then actually the first was actually a guy that was one of my mentors when I was a young sergeant in Baltimore County.
Okay, okay. And how's your acclimation to the new agency been?
It's been fun, right? And it's been a lot of learning, because, like I said, there's one side of the house that I probably don't need a lot of teaching on, but the house with the natural resources and the conservation laws and things that they do. And I've been so amazed by the fact that, considering how we have the whole state, they've been able to do it with the bodies that they've been having, the resources that they have. But we're working on some things to look into staffing and things of that nature to make sure that we're not only providing the best service that we can provide, but providing a safe service for those who actually work here as well.
Is there any specialized training that's needed before you apply? Like, do you need a degree in biology or something like that?
You don't need your degree in biology or any of those things. It is helpful if you have somewhat of a background in conservation, at least understanding some of those things. But it's definitely not something that is fully necessary for you to actually come here and be an employee here. Matter of fact, we champion people and the opportunity for people to look at this as one of their career choices. When they're looking in law enforcement, and because I'm new, one of the tasks that I'm going to be assigned and that I am assigned is just looking at how can we make sure that we're also diversifying the agency a little bit more as well.
No doubt, no doubt. And you being from North Carolina originally, maybe this could have been a different career path for you if you went there first, right?
Yeah, I mean, had I been more informed about some of the things that they do, it's like definitely in North Carolina, hey, uh, most of us grow up fishing, and and a significant number of us grow up hunting as well. But a lot of times we may not be exposed. Even with my counterpart who's in charge of the parks, there's so many things that I'm learning that, even as a Marylander now, not being a native, but being here for over 32 years, there's so many things I was not aware of, and so many things that I didn't realize that we had access to. And now I'm learning those things now, and had, like you said earlier, or at least that you alluded to, that had I been informed and knew a little bit more. And that's part of my job too, is to make sure that we are introducing this as a whole option for other people who are looking at law enforcement. Because, like I said, we're one of the few not only to do it here in the state, but doing it in the country. I said, when you look at most conservation places around the country, they do one or the other. They don't do both, and we actually get
Right.
to do both.
Yeah. Yep. So how are you starting to get that word out?
A lot of it is just by doing a lot of the informal talks. I am setting up uh, some meetings with some of the faith-based places, particularly those African American churches that I was familiar with and had already had established a lot of those relationships with. I have a relationship with the NAACP, so I'm in conversations with them as well. about how do we get in front of people and just have an opportunity, and not just me, right? I got to lead it. It has to start with me, but it shouldn't end with me, and it'll also include some of the team members as well, to be able to actually go out and tell their story, and not only just tell their story, but educate the populations that we serve. Because most people go to the beaches here, a good number of people go to the waters here, waterways, and it gives us an opportunity to communicate differently with those stakeholders. And so currently, I'll have discussions like I'm doing with you, and along with them as well, and along with the team, about how do you like negotiate those conversations with staff members and people, not just with the staff here, but people in Department of Natural Resources, because Natural Resources Police is a part of Department of Natural Resources, not the only
Okay.
agency in natural resources. And so, like I said, you have the park rangers, which is a total different entity all itself. You have wildlife, which we help with them, particularly with the enforcement piece. But those are the components that are not necessarily the Department of Natural Resources and Police, but are a part of Department of Natural Resources.
Right, right. Now, right now in 2024, a lot of agencies are having a hard time recruiting,
Mhm,
and especially in the Black and Brown community, because of
mhm.
incidents that we've had in recent years. Do you find that natural resources is a viable option to those in the African American and Black and Brown communities, because maybe you won't have to deal with Black and Brown to that degree, where you're pulling them over, as far as they think, pulling them
Yeah.
over for no reason and stuff like that.
Well, and I think that, it's two different, for me, those are two different questions, right? One of them is about the context of how people think and how people can become polarized based on their association with what they've been exposed to. I'm also an adjunct professor, and so I teach math application at the University of Baltimore. And so one of the things that I normally talk to the students about is when they're looking at TV, to match up the anecdotal stories they may have with the empirical data that exist. And so that's
That
one
part.
question. The second portion would be, of course, that is part of my goal, is to make sure that we're reaching out to some of those communities and looking for what I call the relational policing model, not just the community engagement piece, right? For a long time, we've used community policing as a cover to, and in law enforcement in general, about how do we build those relationships. And what we've in turn done was we built partnerships. Partnerships are transactional. What we're looking for are relational things, right? Where no matter if Orlando Lilly is here or not, we've developed a culture where people is always looking for an opportunity to engage. It's kind of like being in a fraternity or sorority. In my fraternity, we always saying, always have some paraphernalia on, because you don't never know when it'll strike a conversation. Well, Orlando Lilly never goes anywhere if I don't have on a Natural Resources Police hat or a shirt that turns into a conversation, right? And it has
Okay.
happened. Even in this short time, it has happened. And it allows me to give people a conversation, but more importantly, ask questions first so I know how to drive the conversation. And you've interviewed enough people to know this yourself as well. The number one response when you ask people, why do they want to be the police? The number one response is that they want to help people. Guess what, Dale? Sometimes until they got to help people, right? And so what it is, it becomes an educational thing, and it becomes not so much a formal education, but one of socialization about how people see other people. And so this, for me, in the Natural Resources Police, I believe, is a great opportunity for us to expand the boundaries of those conversations with people that traditionally we don't always have opportunities to get in front of, particularly Black and Brown communities, and as well as some of the other growing populations within the state of Maryland. The Russian community is a large growing population within the state of Maryland, as well as the Asian population within the state of Maryland. And all of these people partake of all of the natural resources in Maryland, the parks, the
Yes.
waterways, all those things. Uh, and so for me, there's this opportunity presents itself to balance the conversation along with people's fears and their concerns and their experiences. The one thing that we never get to do is argue with people's emotions. You never can
Right.
do that. But I always say, hey, show me the data. And I tell you that, and there's a reason why I share my own story in it, which is a great question that you ask people, particularly for those of us who happen to be of color in this profession, is how did we get here? Well, I had my own perspectives about law enforcement as a kid, right? Because based on what I saw, but based on what happened to me, somebody that looked just like the people that I saw, who I felt like may not been representing the profession well, it was the same. It was a guy who looked just like them and who did me well. He served me well. He treated me well, and because of him, he'll never know that I became a police officer because of something that he did and something that he said, and that was be human in the moment that I needed to see humanity be its best.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great words to live by. So now, as a superintendent, what's kind of your goal for your stint there?
So my stint here is to really be a place where to cast a vision and what I say, open the door, right? When we're talking about those things like diversity, equity, inclusion, and depending on where you stand when you hear those words, 'cause for some people those can be like four-letter words. I said, but what I tell people in
Mhm.
my role is diversity is about opening the door, and it's not just about diversity in the way of ethnicity, color, or race. It is diversity of thought. And I learned a valuable lesson between being a African American kid from North Carolina who moved to Jersey City and an African American kid who grew up down south to move to Maryland. And while being in Maryland, which allowed me to like really say, okay, yeah, I look like a lot of the Marylanders here, but we come from different backgrounds and we sometimes don't have the same exact values and we don't sometimes have totally different perspectives. But then that means I need to practice cognitive recognition, that active listening, and in that mode understand that, hey, we all live by the four A's. Attention, everybody wants to be seen. Affection, everybody wants to know that you have their back. That third A is appreciation. People want to know that you appreciate them. And the last A is acceptance, which is really about diversity. you know People want to be included, and so my role here is opening the door. And I've shared this with the colleagues that I work with to say, hey, look, I'm here to open the door to do a lot of the things that many of you have desired to do, many of you have had the consciousness to do, and may not have had the opportunity to do. When we think about leadership, particularly in the role of superintendent or chief, we often, and it's not just this discipline, we assign too many positive bias to the word leadership, right?
Right,
Forgetting that, negative or poor leadership and positive leadership has these same three components in place: uh, yeah, authority, influence, and power. So it is all about how do you use those three components, and then understanding in the realm of positive bias, are you just using the term leadership with the hopes that we're getting there? No, leadership is always about influence, influencing through people. And so in my eyes and in my role, my leadership is only going to be as strong as the fellowship. Right. And
right.
so I have to empower those people that I'm working with every day. I've set and I'm in my stages right now doing one-on-ones with everyone to give them an opportunity to talk to me as Orlando, who just happens to be the colonel or the superintendent and not Superintendent Lilly. Because based on whatever your relationship was with previous colonels or superintendents, you will walk into those relationships and those discussions based on your experience there. And if the trust is low, people who lack the ability to trust lack the ability to engage in unfiltered and passionate debate of ideas. These people will always have failed discussions or guarded comments. And so my season is to build an organization of trust, to make sure that the agency thrives, to make sure that it expand the boundaries of its demographics as it relates to diversity, and providing an opportunity of service where other people have an opportunity to serve.
Amen. Amen. One thing that you just piqued my interest on there when you mentioned that your title is either colonel or superintendent.
Mhm.
How's the structure there, the hierarchy? Does that mean that there's someone above you?
So there's a secretary that's above me,
Okay.
and which is the head of Department of Natural Resources.
Okay.
But I'm the head of this agency. So there's agency, and then just like normally on state level, those are terminologies that they normally use, superintendent, but the actual bird is the colonel. And
Okay.
so So normally on state level it's superintendent as opposed to using chief, even though the Maryland Department of Transportation uses the terminology chief, but they have the Colonel Bird as well. So pretty much all the state police departments have the rank of colonel who's running their agencies.
Right. Okay. So then it basically is just like, in the municipal, your secretary would be like the mayor, and I'm sure there's a board that would be like the city council and so on and
Yeah,
so forth, right?
kind of. I mean, the secretary answers to the governor, and so it's the governor, secretary, and then it's me.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like that.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. So, there's a lot to unpack there with your agency, and it sounds like that you're getting a handle on it in your couple of months there. What's the most rewarding part of your short time being there?
The most rewarding was to be able to actually go out on the water and watch people enjoy something that you could really take for granted or really not have an exposure to.
Yeah.
Which, hey, that's my challenge for you when you get off. It's like, hey, find out what agency really runs the waterway and go out there and spend some time out there and look at it through those lens. And it's a different perspective to be able to listen to some of these guys that have been here already and been here for a long time, and to just sit and listen to them and things that I didn't think about.
Yeah.
As someone, as a recreational boater, you don't think about, but then as someone who's trying to be a practitioner and keeping the waterways safe, you have
Yes.
a total different perspective of those things. So that's been one of the better rewarding things for me.
Yeah. Interesting thing about waterways is in law enforcement is you are actually keeping the waterways safe daily, because the
Mm-hmm.
waterways are really dangerous. People get out there and don't know how to swim, and don't use
Mm-hmm.
life vests and all that sort of stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of things you guys deal with, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's the and that would be one of the negative things, right? The negative experiences to get a page or a notification that someone's drowned, a body, somebody fell in the water, and now we got to try to put something together, a surface search on the water, or have the dive team to be able to try to go in and see it. So you want people to enjoy themselves, but you also, as Clint Eastwood would say in one of my favorite movies, every person must know their limitations. Know your
No
limitations.
doubt.
Use the things that are provided for you in the way of safety, a vest, all of those things. And so that way, if you know that you're not the greatest swimmer, you still give yourself a chance to be able to survive currents and things of that nature in the water.
Right. And another big thing on the waterways is alcohol too, right? Just as much
Absolutely.
as on the
Absolutely.
highways, right?
Absolutely. You have the OUIs just like you have DUIs, right? You have people who are out and under the influence on the water, drinking and doing things. And look, when you're young, period, most of you feel invincible. It doesn't change the dynamic of that by having a young person on a boat. And sometimes they don't even have to be young. I always remind people that chronology in itself does not equate adulthood.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably a little different because people think, when you're out on the boat anyway, you're out there having fun, you're barbecuing or you got your lunches and stuff like that. And you're drinking as well. It's not like, many people are out driving while they're drinking or drinking while they're driving. It's usually, they drink and then go drive. So,
Yeah,
you got to get that through people's minds that, when you're out there and you are on the boat, you can't be consuming alcohol, right?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the team and I, even if you and I had this discussion, one of this emails that I sent this morning was how we track those things and how do we provide an educational platform to be on the proactive side of it as opposed to the reaction side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, but I'm kind of trying to work through this in my own mind because I've never worked on the waterways, and I don't have a boat either, so I don't go out there that often.
You
But
never know. You never know,
you never,
Dale. You
yeah,
never
yeah.
know.
Well, you know what they say, when people to buy their toys, two best days of having a boat is when you buy it and when you sell it.
Yeah, 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 that's true. That is true. That is true. That is true.
Yeah, because keep that upkeep of it ain't no joke though.
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, yeah. but I was saying that when you're out there with your boys or your friends and you have that cooler full of beer, and your officers come upon them, is it still okay to have that beer out there in the cooler while you're on
You
the
can't.
water?
I mean, you shouldn't have anything really open, right?
Okay.
You're still driving a vehicle. You may not be on the street, but you still are operating a vehicle. So those operating under the influence is just as serious and get the same penalties or charges if as a DUI, right? So you can't
Right.
operate under the influence either. We really don't want to see you doing any of those things. If you're up close to the pier, those are a different story, right? You tied into the pier, but other than that, we really don't want to be in that situation because here's the thing. Uh, it is like you taking candy out of your pocket and taking the wrapper off. Are you really not going to eat the candy? And so if you got any kind of alcoholic beverage with you out somewhere, there's a good high probability that you're gonna partake of the libations yourself.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. And we touched on the most rewarding part. What about the most challenging part of your job right now?
The challenging part is culture. Once you start making the identification that yeah, there might be some culture changes, and then the challenge is, well, where do you start with that, right? Everybody says, oh, the beginning. Well, what's the beginning, right? And so the challenge is looking at that, trying to figure out where you're going to start. Who are you going to allow to kind of bring in as an independent consultant to give you the information that you really need before you can make any decision moving forward? I think that only what happens in this profession, particularly for those of us who become agency heads, is we base everything off of our past experience. And then sometimes that may be limited, but then you may not have that well rounded out about the blind spots that you may have. And
Okay.
so, and so that can be a challenge if you're not cognizant of it, which is really the premise of that emotional intelligence component of that piece, right? Is for you to be self-aware enough so you can self-regulate yourself, so you can make sure you're not making decisions from the fact that you got the job, right?
Right.
During my ceremony, one of the things that I pointed out, one of the old Tennessee Vol coaches would say that you have 24 hours to celebrate or mourn. And so that's what I did with myself. I celebrated for 24 hours, but then I knew I needed to get to work after that, because any longer than that, you have this propensity to believe that you're really that good. And so, I to make myself stay humble and be grateful about the opportunity is to focus on the work, and as well as understand that the challenges that lie ahead of me will not be easily overcome just because Orlando Lilly is the superintendent. It has to be Orlando Lilly who surrounds himself with a good team, makes my ear available with them, and then really understanding where do I need to start to tackle with the challenge itself.
Right. Right. Let's talk about that. Can you give me an example of a culture change that you would like to see implemented, and what was the difference?
Well, I mean, like I said, it's still early, so I can't say, oh, it's definitely this thing. Right
Okay.
now, it's just the little things of the people really making independent decisions, right? Being okay to make the decision,
Okay.
and not feeling like you need to run that everything by me. No, make the decision,
Yeah.
right? And because if people have gotten promoted, then the promotion, which is pretty much like a degree or a diploma, it doesn't say that you can do. It says that you've been provided all of the resources and it demonstrated that it's possible for you to do. And I think that if you've had a culture where all the decisions had to be made at my level, where everybody beneath me then are afraid to make decisions. And
Right.
and so for me, that's kind of a culture shock thing because in Baltimore County, we expected that if you were a captain, if you were a lieutenant, if you was a sergeant, if you were a major, make the decision, right? Make the decision.
Right.
Doesn't have to be a perfect decision, but make a decision.
Make a decision. Absolutely. And that's how, a lot of us are in this profession all the way down to the rookie
Yeah.
Fresh out the academy, we've got to make those decisions because, when we're out on the street, we got to make those decisions, those
Yeah.
second decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, look, when people call 911, and it's a balance, right? When people call 911, 9 times out of 10, they have ran the gauntlet of their ability or capacity to make a decision in that moment, and
Right.
they want somebody to do it. The balance is for us to get to that place and still allow those people that we're serving to make the best decision along with our guidance, not go into the place and make the decision. And like I said, even for the profession, that's a culture change. If I was had the opportunity to still go back and work on my PhD, it was something. Those are things that I really want to focus on studying. Is, do we need to revamp the capacity people have in the profession to be able to make decisions at the lowest level and to actually think the decision through without feeling guilty or feeling judged for spending too much time at a call at a particular house,
Right.
because the next officer is saying, "Oh, you've been on this call too long." Well, you're dealing with people, right? People are way more complex than complicated, and so a gear watch is complicated. You can take it apart, you can understand how the gears move, and put it right back together. The complexity of human being is way much more dynamic in it, and because of the dynamic of that, you can't say that somebody gonna go on one call where there's an argument and another call that's an argument, and both of them should spend the same amount of time. There may be some
Exactly.
other dynamics going there, and that's it. And so that's kind of that where I look at where we are, and even in the profession, and people still trying to define it. And if for those who've done the research in the world of law enforcement, particularly in policing, you'll find that there's really little data that relates on study with the culture of law enforcement as opposed to the work of law enforcement.
No doubt. No doubt. And you've had a long, storied career there over in Maryland.
Hmm.
Let's talk about a couple things before I get you out of here. The
Hmm.
best parts of your career and the worst parts of your career. Can you talk about an incident where it really just shook you? Maybe an investigation you were involved in,
Hmm. Hmm.
something that's really interesting for our viewers and listeners to hear in law
Yeah.
enforcement.
Um, and this, every call sticks out to you that you've gone on where there may have been some level of violence, but this particular call, this was right before I made the rank of corporal in Baltimore County. And it was a domestic. We go to the domestic, and it was pretty gruesome. And for the sake of your audience, I'll try to make sure I just keep it light to a degree. But it was really gruesome, a really gruesome crime scene. But I can remember the little girl, and the little girl had to be about 5 years old, and I was just shocked at the how the brain worked and how the brain makes adjustments to deal with any kind of trauma or tragedy. And the little girl would go vacillate back and forth between the monster and her father, and it was almost near school time, and at the point she would not go to anybody else other than me. So they asked me would I stay over, and I stayed over because the little girl didn't want to go to anybody else. And I can just remember at the while, the homicide detectives wanted me to start asking questions, but I also needed to ask them in a way that a little girl could understand them and make sure that I was being sensitive to where her head was while she was talking. And but ultimately, what we came to realize was the monster and her father were the same people, but because it was also her father, the parts of her brain could not connect with the fact that it was her father that had killed her mom. And but ultimately, we was able to solve the case because of stuff that she was saying. And in that moment, when I left and I went home, and this was before we had wellness and all these other things. I look back and I remember I could not go to sleep when I got home. I could not go to sleep. I worked the midnight shift. This happened as you would have it right at the end of midnight shift. It happened, and uh, and I just kept telling myself, like, what is going to happen with this little girl, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is going to happen with this little girl, and how is her brain going to reconcile what she was exposed to as a little kid when she become an adult? How would that, my head was just racing with all these thoughts beyond the gruesomeness of the scene. It did something to me. It still impacts me. I still think it impacts the way that I look at my own kids and how I looked at the world. And it has been one of those things where, I tell people, I think statistically they say that most people may experience about seven things of trauma within their lifespan. But in this line of work, you can go exceed that in a day. And then
Absolutely. Yeah.
try to figure out how do you balance your humanity once you leave and take the uniform off and take the gun off and still be relational and still be personable, and still show a level of sensitivity. And so that it was gruesome, it was hard, but it also made me understand that how much we may have to invest into remaining human and understanding that it still impacts us. And Dale, me being transparent and honest, I think that so much happens in the course of our career. We try to speed past that, and some days we're not our best selves because we forget those human moments. And I have to speak for myself. There's times where, hey, my bluntness, my straightforwardness, which can be indicative of the profession about getting to the bottom line of everything, can get in the way of you being patient enough and being human with people when they need you to be.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. But hopefully, talking about your story, how that officer was compassionate and helped you through your
Oh, most
traumatic thing
definitely.
that you went through. Sounds like you were the same for this little girl, and hopefully, maybe things turned out okay for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That definitely would be my hope and prayer.
Yeah. Yeah. And then now on the flip side, let's talk about something that just really uplifting and something you were proud to be a part of during your career.
So before I left Baltimore County years ago, when I used to be the Blue Guardian president, I would have all these meetings with the chiefs of police, and as well as their executive staff at the time about the diversity of the agency. And I had this one colonel at the time who she was more like a big sister, a mother when I needed that, who really guided me. And I remember her saying to me one day, remember that whenever you have your fingers pointing at somebody, remember how many are pointing back at you. And so she said, I know that every time you come to the meeting with the chief, you talk about the lack of diversity as it relates to promotions and particularly with minority women at the time. And the one thing that made me proud was I left that meeting. I met with my board with the Blue Gardens, and we made a decision that we were going to purchase studying books and we were going to put on these studying classes. And we put on studying classes. And the thing that made me most proud was that before I left, I was able to see the first African American lieutenant, female lieutenant, and then one of her friends who we also helped get promoted, and then it was another one, and I was just I it. Sometimes you can do things and you wait so long to see them, you kind of tell yourself that they're never going to happen. But when that happened, I cried. I really cried.
Yeah.
And and she and I are really still great friends. I tried to get her promoted woman, try to take the captain exam woman, and I kind of knew she was done. So I quit pushing her. I said, but I felt that the work that some of us had put into wanting to see some things happen and because it wasn't just about me seeing it. My story to her was that other young African American females needed to see you, and they needed to
Yes.
see that it was possible. And look, I'm living in a metropolitan area, and it was always the rib of how you that big and you look the way that you look. But I would always remind people that there's a responsibility that all of us have that look like me when we get on those jobs to participate in the process, right? If
Yeah.
you don't participate in the process, you really can't say much about what the upper echelon look like until you get in those roles because I'll be the first one to say no one wants it given to them. You're already challenged when you get in it anyway, and the last thing that you want is someone to give it to you and you not earn it and then be able to stand on your own 2 feet in that process. And so be able to see her grow, see her become a mentor, see her to become an advocate to a lot of group of other young women. They recently, before I left, had sent me a picture of all the female African American female supervisors, and all I could do was shake my head. Could shake my head, was like, that's what I wanted to see. That's what I wanted to see.
We say this phrase nowadays when we're trying to recruit, be the change that you want to see. We say that externally when we're recruiting, internally as well. We should be
absolutely
saying that as well too. Yeah,
absolutely, Dan. That's well said. I mean, and look, I know people need encouragement. I know, and people study different, they read different. But I always tell people, I said, look, your brain is like any other muscle. You don't use it, you lose it. Right. And so any given time, I'm reading 3 or 4 books at one time, because I've learned the value of not reading through a book. I learned the value of reading into the book and finding where I am, so I can identify with what I'm reading and then be able to internalize it to the degree that it can become a manifestation of how I operate.
There you go. There you go. All right, sir. Hey, man, I appreciate you stopping by and sharing your story with us. Real quick, you mentioned earlier that, family life, you had kids. Any of them following Dad's footsteps?
No, my oldest daughter, she's 26. She just recently graduated with her master's from John Hopkins. She double mastered and got her MBA as well as a master of communications. So she lives in New York, but she also went to Duke like her mom as an undergrad. My son, who's 12, don't ask questions. We found out the hard way. Everything still worked. But he has aspirations of possibly becoming an FBI or something like that. So we'll see. We'll see. He likes what Dad. He pinned me, and I told him, I said, well, don't just do it because Dad do it. Just really gotta. This has to be something that you. And so I kind of feel like if somebody's gonna kind of follow my footsteps, it will probably be him.
There you go. That's what's up. All right, sir. Hey, man, again, like I appreciate you stopping by, and this is real good that we got some information. We know all about the Maryland Natural Resources Police now, and you guys are hiring, right?
Yes, sir. So look, anybody who's interested, please reach out, and we'll make sure that a recruiter or someone can talk to you and walk you through some things. And even if you're in the area, there's an opportunity for you even to do a ride along or something with a natural resources officer, and that way you can get a little bit more information from there.
All right, that's what's up. All right, sir. Hey, you enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk soon.
All right, man. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure and an honor, and I look forward to speaking with you real soon again.
Yep. Take care now. All right, now, another amazing interview is in the books for the Black and Blue Podcast. I want to thank Maryland Natural Resources Police Superintendent Orlando Lilly for dropping by to share his story with us. I really enjoyed our conversation, sir. And if you guys out there enjoyed the conversation too, let me know by leaving a comment in the section down there below. And don't forget to like and share this episode as well. Hey, I'll be back real soon with another awesome story from another minority in U.S. law enforcement. But till then, stay black and blue. I'll holler at you. Peace.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.